I have run the counter at the Waystone for 31 years, and in that time, I learned that the long cut brings you two kinds of trouble. The kind that walks in on two legs, hungry and broke, and the kind that comes on a storm wind and doesn't walk in at all. It just waits under your dock until you find it, or it dies there quiet, and you never know the difference. That's how I found him. A gray dawn in early frost, wind still tearing at the tin roof from the night before, and something pale curled under the loading dock where I kept the fuel drums. I thought at first it was a sack somebody's rig had shed, then it breathed. He was small for a dragon, even a young one, no bigger than a calf, and where the others of his kind run deep red or slate, or that mottled green-brown you see on the freight haulers, he was pale as a fish belly, scales gone the color of skimmed milk clear down to his claws. One wing sat wrong against his back, folded at an angle. Wings aren't meant to fold. He'd dragged himself under my dock to die out of the wind, and he watched me with an eye the color of weak tea, waiting for whatever I was going to do about it. I have fried eggs and poured coffee for men who'd have shot him on sight. Out here they call the pale ones cursed. Say a white hatchling in a clutch means the harvest fails, means the wells run dry, means somebody in the house is going to die before the year's out. I don't know where that started. I know it's old, and I know men believe old things harder than they believe what's standing in front of them. What was standing in front of me, or lying in front of me, was a hurt animal, so I did what I'd do for anything hurt that came to my door. I got a blanket, and I got the good meat instead of the trimmings, and I sat with him until the shaking stopped. I named him Pell, after no reason I can point to. It just fit his mouth, the way he cocked his head at it. For 6 weeks I kept him in the dry goods room behind the counter, splinted that wing with slats from a crate, and fed him better than I fed myself some weeks, because a growing dragon eats like there's no bottom to him. I told the drivers who stopped through that I had rats in the back, and they should mind their boots. Nobody argued with an old woman about rats. I let them believe whatever kept them out of my storeroom. He grew fast, the way animals do when somebody finally feeds them right. By the 4th week, he was following me around the kitchen on legs still too big for him, knocking over the flour tin, sneezing at the pepper. He liked to lie in the strip of morning sun that came through the east window while I did the breakfast rush, and I liked having him there. My husband's been gone 11 years, and the Waystone gets quiet in ways a person doesn't always want to name. Pell filled some of that quiet without either of us meaning for him to. But you can't hide a dragon forever, pale or not. Not on a road where every rig driver talks to the next one at every stop between here and the coast. Word does what word does. By the 6th week I heard it come back to me second-hand, twisted the way rumors are, that the Waystone woman was harboring a cursed hatchling, that she'd brought the bad luck down on her own house, and would bring it down on the road too if somebody didn't do something. I told myself it would blow past. It didn't blow past. It rode in on 4 dragons the color of old iron, wardens out of the Veyrath Dominion, the kind that answer to the matriarch's law and nobody else's, with riders in gray leather who didn't so much dismount as arrive, already walking toward my door before their mounts had folded their wings. I put myself in the doorway before they reached it. The lead rider was a woman about my own age, weathered the way people get, who've spent a life outdoors doing hard, necessary things. She didn't raise her voice. She said they'd tracked a marked hatchling to this address, and the law required it be surrendered for testing, and if it tested pale-blooded the way the reports said, it would be culled before it bred more bad luck into the world. I said he was in my back room asleep, and he was staying there. She looked past me, and I understood then that Pell wasn't in the back room at all. He'd come out at the sound of strange voices, the way any young thing does when it hears something that might be a threat to the person who feeds it, and he was standing behind my knee with his ruined wing half spread, and his small teeth showing, shaking, and not backing down. Nobody moved for a long moment. The 4 gray dragons behind the riders had gone still, in that particular way. Animals go still, right before something happens, necks low, eyes fixed past me, past the woman, on Pell. The lead warden crouched down, not fast, slow, the way you'd approach anything you didn't want to spook, and she looked at him a long time, and something changed in her face that I didn't have a name for yet. She asked to see his wing. I said no. She said please, in a voice that had stopped sounding like law and started sounding like something else. And I let her, because there are some tones you learn to trust even from strangers. She turned his crumpled wing gently in the morning light and went very quiet, tracing a line of markings along the wing bone that I'd always taken for scarring from however he'd been hurt. She said they weren't scars. She said they were a pattern, old and specific, one she'd only ever seen drawn in temple records, the marking of a bloodline the Dominion had believed extinct for 4 generations, wiped out, so the old stories claimed, in a war fought before her grandmother's grandmother was hatched. A line the matriarch herself was descended from on her mother's side, and had mourned as gone. The pale coloring wasn't a curse at all, she said. It was what that bloodline always looked like. The fear had outlived the memory of what it was actually afraid of. I asked her what that meant for Pell. She said it meant she'd be filing a different report than the one she wrote out here to file. They didn't kneel. I want to say that plainly, because I've heard the stories where every last one of them drops to the ground, and it always struck me as more theater than truth. What they did was quieter than that. The lead warden stood and put her hand flat over her own chest for a moment, the way you'd steady yourself after news that changes the shape of a day, and told the others to stand down, and told me, not asked, told me, that the Dominion would be sending someone to see that Pell and I wanted for nothing, for as long as either of us needed it. I told her I didn't want anything. I wanted my counter, and my mornings, and the boy asleep in my dry goods room, and that was the truth of it. They left before noon. Pell stayed pressed against my leg until the last of them was a speck on the long cut, and then he went back to his patch of sun like nothing at all had happened, which I suppose to him it hadn't. He'd only ever known that I fed him and I stayed. It's been most of a year now. He's too big for the storeroom, sleeps out back under a lean-to I had built special, still comes in mornings to lie in that same strip of window light while I do the breakfast rush. Every so often a Dominion rider comes through, quiet, respectful, just checking, and every time I tell them the same thing. We're fine out here, we always were. What I keep coming back to, on the slow mornings, is how close it came to going the other way, how easy it would have been to look at something pale and frightened, and hand it over, because that's what the law said, what the fear said, what everybody else believed. All I did was feed what was hungry and shelter what was hurt, the way anybody with sense would. Turns out that's the whole trick of it. You don't have to know what something's worth to treat it like it matters. Sometimes the mattering was there all along, waiting on somebody willing to look past the color of the scales.